Good morning. This is Lori Myers, and I want to welcome you to the webinar today. We're going to be talking about paragraphs N, O, and P of the Eligibility and Services Rule. So those are the paragraphs covering service coordination, maintenance of records, and exit. With me today is Diane Fox, the EI Program Manager, and she and I will be reviewing some information with you, and then we'll be highlighting the changes of the rule and also kind of pointing out where things have not changed. And then we'll respond to our questions that we received before the webinar. I think we only received one question, but that's okay. You can feel free to continue submitting questions during the session today. However, we're not going to answer them today. We will research the answers for you and respond in an FAQ that we're going to post on the website. However, if you do have clarifying questions about any answers that we give today, we will do our best to answer those as we go along. We wanted to start off by just kind of looking at the website to show you where some of the resources can be found. We have added a new tile to the website where we're housing the information about the rule. We're trying to kind of group it all together so it's like an easy one-stop location for all this information. So if you'll give me just a second, I'm going to pull up the website and kind of show you where these things are located. So this is the home page of the website, and you'll want to click on the yellow Providers tab. And then if you scroll to the bottom of that page, you'll see this tile, Early Intervention Rules 2019. So if you click on that, it's just a one-page sort of summary here. We have at the top the Early Intervention Rules themselves. We didn't attach the new rules officially yet since they don't go into effect until July 1st, but we have the current rules in case you need to reference those, and then the proposed rules, which are basically what the rules will be as of July 1st. Then the next section we have is rule courses. So these are courses with assessments that you can get credit for if you complete all 5 of the modules. They're fairly short, so we're not able to give credit for each of them individually, but if you do all 5, you can get professional development units. So those are found on My Learning, which is a fairly new LMS that we're using, and there's a link there that takes you right to My Learning, or if you need to create an account or need assistance with it, there's an instructions document as well. And then the next section is the recordings of the facilitated webinars. So this webinar today is being recorded, and we are recording all of them so that if people are not available on the day of the webinar, they can go back and watch them and listen to them later. So we have several of them posted so far, and we will get the rest of them up as we go along. For these, we are not able to give credit because we don't have a way to verify that people are participating in these, but they're a great way to review, reference back to anything that you might have missed, or to be able to get the information if you were not available on the webinar date. And then the next part we have our training schedule. So this top part lists all of the facilitated webinars that we're doing. We're going through the middle to end of June, and you can click on the one that you want to register for, and it will take you to the registration link for that webinar. All right, and then below that, we have the schedule for our in-person regional trainings that we're going to have in late summer, or I guess, yeah, late summer and early fall. So August through October, and there are, I think we have about 8 sessions scheduled, so hopefully you can find one that's fairly close to you. The registration is not yet available for those, but we'll be sending that out to you soon. All right, so let's
Lori,
go back.
we have a question. Where will we find the FAQs?
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over that. Thank you for asking. All right, so the FAQs are the very last thing on that page. And so far, we just have one posted. Those are kind of taking us a while to research everything and get all the answers to you. But as soon as we have them available in their final form, those will all be posted in that bottom section there. Thank you for reminding me about that.
And Lori, I posed a question to the group, and a
Okay.
few of us have answered. So I asked, have you visited this website and used these resources? Type yes if you have. Type
Okay.
no if you have not yet
I see that.
visited. Okay. I like that we have far more yeses than nos.
I do too.
So for
Excellent.
those of you who haven't visited this website, please do. This was designed for you to give you the resources you need to plan for implementing this rule July 1st.
Exactly.
So.
And I see a couple questions about people having difficulty accessing the handouts. I have that problem myself sometimes. I don't know. It's just a GoToWebinar glitch, I think. If you're not able to get those, please feel free to email either me or Shaquila, and we can assist you with getting whatever you might need. I'll put my email in the chat box for you, and I'll put Shaquila's in there as well. But hopefully most people are able to access those.
I just tried it and I was able to, but again, sometimes literally it could be the same moment of time. Lori can, I can't, or vice versa. So just keep trying. But we will make sure that you have it. Can't.
All right. Okay, so we just wanted to talk briefly about why we're doing these webinars. You might have heard us go over this in a past webinar, but the idea is that we want to prepare counties to implement the new rules effective July 1st. So we wanted to make sure that we provided this information beforehand so that you would feel prepared once those rules do take effect. And during these sessions, we want to reinforce the things that have not changed in the rule and highlight the ones that have changed. So again, we're wanting counties to be able to prepare in advance, and if they need to change any local procedures, to have an opportunity to do that. As we mentioned a few minutes ago, they're all being recorded and will be posted on that web page that we just looked at, along with other resources.
And Lori, I have another question for for our colleagues. So how prepared do you feel right now with implementing the new rules? Do you feel highly confident? Somewhat confident? Not confident at all? Type in your answers.
Good question.
Hope I spelled confident right. It doesn't look right, but anyway. I'm setting too far back to. So type in your answers. So right now, how are you feeling? We're kind of halfway done with our, oh, wow, okay. Somewhat, highly, awesome. Somewhat, I will feel more confident when I actually begin. Yes, I agree, Amanda. Once we start we're able to use the new forms and whatnot. So make sure, to sign up for the forms webinar. We're going to go line by line. We're also developing an IFSP form guidance document. These things just take a lot longer than we think to make sure that they're correct and ready for you. Oh, so some of us are nervous. Some of us are saying not very, and it's okay. I mean, that's why, we're doing this. And our next slide. So almost all of us are somewhat, and some of us are highly confident. So, and then we've got quite a few that's not confident. I would say majority of us are somewhat confident, which that's exactly where I'd expect you to be right now. So for those of you that are not feeling as confident, or you're not at somewhat confident yet, we encourage you to go online and use the resources that are available. Reach out to your program consultant. We had, Lori was telling me, Holmes County, they got together as a team and went through each piece of the rule, and then they come together to think of questions and then send them in to us. Those kind of things really are helpful. If you're the only service coordinator in your region or supervisor, maybe reach out to other regions to say, hey, do you mind, working with me on this? So those are some ideals to kind of, increase our confidence. If there's something that we're missing, I really get the practice piece of it. And we will have a lot of practice opportunities at our regional meeting. And as a matter of fact, that is the focus of our regional meetings, is to walk through scenarios and actually choose the forms and figure out how to plan the activity and what you have to do with the activity. After the forms are filled. Okay, very good. Very good. All right. All
And
right.
I do see another couple questions that I wanted to respond to. Mary was asking, will the new forms be available electronically as of July 1st? And yes, they will.
Yes.
And then I'm going to let Di answer this one. Are the in-person regional trainings mandatory for all service coordinators, or just if you want more practice using the new rules?
Well, we are saying they're highly, highly recommended. So what we will share in these trainings, we will expect to see in practice. So if you're not there or present, you might miss some guidance or feedback. So I would highly, highly recommend that you attend these regionals. And part of the service coordinator grant agreement this year, one of the things the leadership will describe is how they're preparing the teams to implement the new rules. And so hopefully this is a strategy. Yeah, so the other EI providers attending this regional. So for this regional training, we are focusing on the role of the service coordinator and the supervisor. So all the scenarios will be related to service coordination. So our thought behind that is we really want to get a solid foundation with the service coordinators, especially since there's a lot of new, they're all new forms. So we really wanted to really start there. We are planning to also do regionals late spring, and that will we will invite all team members to that one, and the focus will be on Section 3 and Section 4 of our new IFSP. So the targeted audience is service coordinators and supervisors of service coordinators and FCFC. So those who are responsible for service coordination. We also said that EI directors or supervisors are invited too. It's just be aware that the targeted audience is service coordinators. Yes,
Right.
this is still recommended for credentialed service coordinators. The expectation would be that all the service coordinators attending the training are credentialed service coordinators. So yes, we highly, highly, highly encourage you to participate in the regionals. All right.
So speaking of the regionals,
Yes.
here are the dates again, and we will also be sending out a flyer with these dates this Friday in the biweekly. So if you don't remember or you can't locate these dates, you'll see them a number of different times. So you can see we tried to spread them out throughout the state. And if you were one of the people that answered you're not confident or you're semi-confident, the idea with these is that once you've been working with the new rules for a little while, a couple months, you'll be able to come together as a group with us and share any challenges that you've had or anything that's still confusing. So it's kind of a progressive process. We're trying to prepare people in advance, but we realize, as someone mentioned, that maybe it doesn't really click until you're doing it every day. So these trainings will be very scenario-based and very interactive. All right, and Becky had a question about EI providers attending the regionals, and Di mentioned this a few minutes ago, but in case anyone missed it, we're not targeting this towards EI providers other than the service coordinators. So the target audience is going to be service coordinators and service coordination supervisors, and also FCFC coordinators and EI directors are also invited. And Jessica, I think the Guernsey County's session was canceled. We did have a date in Guernsey County on October 9th, but I believe that one has been changed. Di, does that sound correct to you?
We'll check in with Karen, but yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay.
But don't fret. Remember, we've got these spring regionals, which we will be inviting teams to, so we will need a lot of spaces. So, we're keeping a list of counties and locations for free space. So we will be hitting you up again, Jessica.
Absolutely. All right. So now let's go into the rule itself and talk about the responsibilities of the service coordinator. I just want to start out by saying every time I look at the service coordination rules, I think about what a huge job it is and all the different responsibilities. And it's amazing that you are all doing all of these things every day. So we're going to talk about the different responsibilities of the service coordinator and the service coordination requirements. So these should already be familiar, as changes in this rule mainly have to do with referencing other sections of the rule. So the changes in the actual content, there really are not a lot of changes. So a lot of this will be review for you. We want to remind you it's important to remember that service coordination is one of the 18 EI services, and that the program shall ensure that each child in early intervention is assigned one service coordinator, and that EISC must be assigned as soon as possible after program referral, but in enough time to complete service coordination activities within the 45-day timeline. In addition, early intervention service coordination programs shall ensure that service coordinators meet the qualifications for credentialing, and those would be in Rule 5123-10-04. And if you need to review those, that is one of the recorded webinars that is posted to the website. All right, so let's get into the different responsibilities of the service coordinator. Two of the important responsibilities are explaining EI to the family and assisting the family in gaining access to needed EI services. So the service coordinator is starting off right from the very beginning of the process with the family. Also, coordinating the provision of EI services is another responsibility, and this includes both EI services and non-EI services identified as needed by the IFSP team. Examples of this would be locating EI providers and locating resources. Also, coordinating evaluations and assessments, that's another role of the EI service coordinator, and this includes helping families understand the process, explaining what the process will be, who will be involved, and what the expectations are of the family and the other players. It also includes providing prior written notice and obtaining informed consent. Facilitating and participating in the IFSP development is another main function of an EI service coordinator. So they're going to facilitate and participate the development, the review, and the evaluation of the IFSP. They will explain the IFSP process and what it means, who is able to be involved, and the importance of the family's participation. And the EISC is also significant in supporting the parent, in advocating for the child, and ensuring the family knows their rights and responsibilities within the process. All right, so hopefully we're starting off with an easier question in our knowledge check. So this is a true or false question. True or false, a role of the EISC is to help the family access needed EI and non-EI services. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that, and then you'll have a few seconds to respond to that.
I like watching the polls.
I do too.
Oh, we've got a strong. So 54% of you voted. So keep the votes coming. True or false? Role of the EI service coordinator is to help the family access needed early intervention and non-early intervention services. All right. Once we hit over 70, we will share the answer. If you cannot vote on your computer, go ahead and type in your answer in the chat box. All right, we got over 70%. And the answer is, Lori?
The answer is true. All right, so we had 96% of you did answer true. A few answered false, and I think there was some question about the non-EI services. So, Di, I don't know if you want to briefly talk about that.
Does non-EI services include outpatient therapy? If not, on the IFSP or provide? Okay, so that I don't have enough information to really respond because I'm not sure the exact question. So Amy, if you would send in your question regarding non-EI services, I think what you're asking is, do the outpatient therapy services go on as the other services? And so, of course, the answer, if not on the IFSP or provided by system of payment. So I'm thinking it's a good, again, there's a lot of things I'm not sure of. So Amy, if you would clarify your question, we'll see if we can answer it. Let's see. Oh, okay. So Becky's talking about the role of advocacy and the service coordinator. With a service coordinator hat, advocacy could come into play throughout the early intervention system. So one of the roles of the service coordinator is to help the parent understand each of the required activities and the optional activities. So for example, evaluation, program planning, transition, exiting, IFSP development. So explaining all of that, but we also get into some advocacy, maybe related to housing or related to access to mental health treatment or all kinds of things. I mean, we wear this as a service coordinator, you may be asked to advocate for the family in a number of ways. So hopefully that answers your question, but it's really hopefully about supporting and teaching the family how to advocate for themselves and on behalf of their child with a disability or developmental delay. So yes, and that would include educational services, being prepared for the IEP meeting and what they want to share with the LEA, what maybe they don't want to share with the LEA. So those are good examples.
All right, and we did get a couple questions about giving examples of non-EI services.
Yeah, let's put FAQ
Table that
on
one.
those. Yeah,
okay.
And so that way we've got a variety of examples, and we'll just include that in our FAQs.
All right, sounds good. Okay, and thank you for participating in that poll. We will move on now and talk about some other responsibilities of the EI Service Coordinator. So the EISC also provides referrals and support to families, thus ensuring that EI services are a match for the outcomes. It's important to be knowledgeable regarding all possible EI services and all appropriate providers for those services, not just in your county, but outside your county as well. The EISC will also coordinate, facilitate, and monitor the delivery of needed early intervention services, as well as other services identified in the IFSP to ensure that services are provided in a timely manner. So that's your TRS, or timely receipt of services. The EISC also follows up with families to ensure services are delivered as promised on the IFSP, and will monitor when services started with providers to obtain the notes to ensure TRS. And the EISC must ensure that the appropriate services and providers needed to meet the outcomes are provided. This check-in with families and providers allows the EISC to see what is working and to address any changes that are needed, which means IFSP updates and reviews when necessary. Some more responsibilities include informing families of their rights and procedural safeguards, and this should be done throughout the family's journey in EI. It's important for all EI service providers to know and follow the procedural safeguards requirements, but the EISC is ultimately responsible for providing and explaining this information to the families. And if you need more information about procedural safeguards, those are in Rule 5123-10-01. EISCs also must implement all the requirements of the System of Payments rule, and that one is 5123-10-03. And our website has all of the forms related to the System of Payment rules. So if you're looking for those, you'll find those on the website. And we will also be doing 2 webinars on the System of Payments in June. We're going to have part 1, which will cover requirements for all families, and then a part 2 that's going to talk about requirements when a System of Payments provider is involved. And Tracy Kazee, who is our EI resource manager, she will be the subject matter expert for those System of Payments webinars. The service coordinator also facilitates the transition plan. The rule related to transition is going to be covered in next week's webinar, so that'll be on the 28th. And also facilitates changes to the IFSP and other forms, and we'll be looking at those in other trainings as well. So those are all of the webinars that we have coming up in the next few weeks. All right, so more responsibilities of the service coordinator include gathering the essential information that will be used by the IFSP team to complete the child outcome summary. So although the determination of the cause ratings is a team process, the service coordinator is the one who facilitates that process and facilitates the gathering of all the information that's going to be needed to make those ratings. It's also generally the responsibility of the EISC to enter those cause statements into EIDS. Another role includes ensuring that professional referral sources receive feedback on referrals. And there's a new form to provide that feedback, and it's EI-14, and it must be provided within 60 calendar days. We also need to get parent consent to provide this information to the referral source. Another responsibility can be referring the child to home visiting or other programs. So if during the conversations with the family, the EISC discovers that the family could potentially be eligible for home visiting, that EISC will provide information to the family about the home visiting program and obtain parent consent to make a program referral. And then if the family does accept home visiting services, the hope is that the programs would work together to ensure continuity. Finally, documenting all of the EISC responsibilities and activities is a requirement of the program. So if you need to brush up on the strategies and requirements for documentation, we do have a documentation training that reviews the requirements for both EI service coordinators and providers, and it covers using case notes, both paper and electronic. Remember, if it was not documented, it was not completed. So that documentation training can be found on My Learning. It's The name of it is High Quality Case Notes and Early Intervention, and you can take that as often as you want if you need to review that information. All right, Diane, I think it's time for another poll. All right, so this is another true or false question. True or false, the EISC must obtain provider case notes to ensure timely receipt of services.
The Early Intervention Service Coordinator must obtain provider case notes to ensure timely receipt of services. So this documentation verifies. Is that true or false? Well, got about 55% of the people who have voted. I was looking up our current guidance document about the other services. I haven't finished reading it yet, so I am trying to formulate a response, but it's going to take me. Do we? Okay, we now have almost 70%, so need a few more responses. All right, we're at 70%, Lori. We have 82% that say true and 18% that say false.
All right, so the answer to that one is true. So good job.
All right, and we got a couple questions related to, well, let's do the poll first and we'll answer some questions.
Do we have another poll? I think that was the one that we took out.
Okay, all right, so we'll just not do that one. So let's get to some questions. Do we still refer to home visiting even if we do not have it in our county? If you are working with a family that you believe is eligible and would benefit from home visiting and with their consent, yeah, go ahead and make the referral. That way they can, I think there'll be a push to add additional providers for home visiting. So they'll Central Intake will be aware of the family and their interest in home visiting. Central coordination is not providing. So Wendy, there's 2 points of contact for our primary referral sources. So Central Intake provides a follow-up, and then the service coordinator also provides a follow-up with parent consent. So the first one says, hey, we received your referral, it's moved on to program, or hey, we received your referral, we haven't been able to make contact with the family. And then at the program level, it's whatever it's the acknowledgement that we received the referral, and then hopefully the family has also consented to provide, maybe additional information, a copy of the IFSP to the doctor, whatnot. But yeah, so there's 2 different points of contact for referral follow-up. So I think I answered Aaron's. Should we? Okay, so Carolyn, very good question. Should we get all case notes from providers to have in our file for our client? So remember, the entire child record is the EI record, and it can be housed in different places. What the service coordinator needs for timely receipt of services is that case note for the very first visit or the very first time the family had access to the intervention. So service coordinators need to verify that that has happened. And if you are monitored for timely receipt of services, then the case notes from that interventionist is what you need to verify timely receipt of services. Okay, so I think I've answered that one. I'm kind of slow at this. So that one I've answered. Yes, Christy, thank you. Central Intake will also provide other resources to the family if there's no home visiting program, such as Early Head Start. Thank you for that. So yes, so please make the referral. A little confused in the previous poll. Yes, Pam, sorry. It's just saying that the service coordinator connects and requests the case note for timely receipt of services. So there's no change to that. So you don't have to have the entire file with you. You just, it's the same. The child's record can be kept in different locations, but when we request a child's record, then the entire record would be submitted. So it's just the service coordinator requesting verification through the case note that the first intervention took place timely, which is within 30 days that it went on on the IFSP. So Erin says that she typically collects provider case notes if TRS will be delivered late or never delivered. Should I have it for every TRS? So you do need a way of verifying that the intervention was provided timely. So that's within 30 calendar days. If you are monitored for timely receipt of services, then the verification method is the case note of the actual interventionist or the provider. So you would need to make sure that you had that case note. Most counties, I would say, have implemented procedures where they request timely receipt of services for all services. So that doesn't mean that you request case notes for every single visit, just the first time that that service has been provided. So Shannon asks the question, is there any rule stating that the county board cannot share provider documentation with service coordinators unless a request has been made? So no, so the county board is part of the early intervention system. And so most county boards are providing the intervention. Some, about half, are providing service coordination as well. So remember from, I believe, last time, we talked about that any agency providing any of the required components of early intervention, they're part of the early intervention system, and we do not need consent to share information. So good question, Erin. What if the service coordinator happens to be at the first visit and observes that the intervention took place and documents that in the case notes, which you should do, but for verification purposes, it would be the case note of the intervention. So you would need that, you would still need that case note from that interventionist. And there's some different questions about, usually email the first visit. And, Erica, a lot of counties do that for just their internal, the local purposes for verifying a TRS. But when the state requests verification for TRS, they will only accept the actual case note from the provider. I think, have I got them all? So yes, so that would be any provider. So that would be our system of payment providers. So any provider who is on the grid providing early intervention services via the IFSP. So yes, so clarifying that timely receipt of services means the very first intervention that took place. So the families first received this first intervention, the very first time they received this service. And timely means 30 calendar days. That's timely receipt of services. So yes, even if the records are in different places, then you still would request the case note to send in for verification. The monthly unit tracking forms would not count as verification that the intervention actually took place. The case note would count. So yes, that's a system. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, good. Cindy is asking about sharing with parents about who their information is shared with. Absolutely, you should share with parents that their information will be shared with the team. So Beth says in their county they have they refer to the forms as different things, so the case notes might be confusing people. So it really is the documentation. We call it the case note of that actual provider. So the provider documents their intervention, how they address the outcome via the IFSP. So they're documenting that they provided the service as written on the IFSP, and that's the case note that's used for verification. All right, Lori, I think we're done answering questions. I think some of them are system of payment that we'll get to in a near future.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so let's move on to paragraph O. And I think, Di, you were going to cover this section.
Do you mind going ahead and I'll start?
No.
I'm going to keep responding to the questions because I may miss some as
Okay.
people are typing them in. You know how it scrolls down, and I just want to make sure we don't miss any.
Sure. Okay. So paragraph O is maintaining early intervention records, and the documentation requirements for EISCs have not changed, but the form names and numbers have changed. So as we mentioned earlier, we will be addressing form completion in our webinar on June 4th. So make sure you sign up for that one if you haven't already. And on that date, we're going to cover all of the forms except for the IFSP. All right, so an early intervention service coordinator shall maintain one record for each child in the EI program, and that record must include copies of required forms and EI program correspondence, EISC case notes, documentation of eligibility, and IFSPs. So this is section 2 of paragraph O, and this section is new and applies to EI service providers other than the service coordinator. So this is what the service provider has to maintain in their records, and that would be documentation of eligibility, the current IFSP, copies of relevant forms and all early intervention program correspondence, and documentation of the early intervention services provided. And this would include the date, length, duration, frequency, intensity, method of delivery, the location, and all activities related to IFSP outcomes. And we kind of touched on this earlier, that it's fine to have part of the record with one agency and the other with another agency. So there may be a separate service coordination entity and then the county board for intervention. And the important thing to remember with this is as long as when the parent or the state requests records, the record can be accessed or shared. So I got some messages that people are having trouble with the audio. Di, are you hearing me okay?
I am.
Okay. So for those of you, if you've lost sound, you may have to log off and back in again. A couple people are saying they are hearing just fine. Okay. All right, so Lori wanted me to repeat the list of things required in the documentation from the provider that has to do with documenting the services. So that would be the date, the length, duration, frequency, intensity, the method of delivery, the location of the services, and all activities related to IFSP outcomes. So it's pretty comprehensive. All right, so this rule also gives the requirement of the EI provider to provide a copy of the child's records within 10 business days when the EI service coordinator makes this request. So an example of this would be what we talked about earlier. The EI service coordinator is trying to verify TRS, or perhaps the parent has requested the child's record. Okay, so time for a quick knowledge check. So this one is when an early intervention service coordinator requests a copy of a child's record from an EI provider, the provider has how long to respond? Is it 10 calendar days, 10 business days, 15 calendar days, or 7 business days?
Well, we have about 46, 48, 50% have voted, and 10 calendar and 10 business days are tying. So,
The 10 business days is winning now by a little bit. Give you a few more seconds to respond.
and this is rule P or O?
Rule O.
O.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. So it looks like we had 44% thought it was 10 calendar days and 52% 10 business days.
So if you have your rules, go to 5123-10-02-03. We'll give you a minute to do that. So I always say rule 2, section O3. Within 10 business days of a request by an early intervention service coordinator and early intervention service provider, this means anyone providing services via the IFSP shall provide a copy of a child's early intervention record. So it's 10 business days.
It is. It seems like a lot of things in the rule go by calendar days, but not this one. All right. All right, so that was the whole rule for maintenance of records, paragraph O. So we're going to move on to paragraph P, which talks about exiting. So there are 2 situations when a child would be exited without the requirement of prior written notice. And that would be when either the child is deceased or the child has reached 3 years of age. So in those 2 situations, you do not need to provide prior written notice. And then in part 2 of paragraph P, it talks about all of the other reasons for exiting. And all of those do require prior written notice on new form EI-10. So EI-10 is the prior written notice of exiting. And then if the child has been determined ineligible, the parent must also receive the evaluation results and prior written notice of ineligibility, which is on form EI-09, along with EI-10. So in that situation where the child's been determined ineligible, there will be two forms that are required, EI-9 and EI-10. In this situation, with exiting, there's no option to waive the 10-day prior written notice. We need to ensure that families have prior written notice in this situation. So in many of the other situations we've talked about in previous webinars, the parent can waive that 10-day prior written notice, but in this situation, they cannot. All right, so Part 3 of this paragraph talks about what happens if the parent is not responding to repeated attempts to get in touch with them. And what would happen is the EI service coordinator would use Form EI-10 to provide prior written notice that the child will be exited if the parent does not contact the EI service coordinator within 10 calendar days from the date of that notice. It's important to be aware of your local exit policy as well, and to document all of your attempts to locate and contact the parent. And this is not a change from the previous rule.
TRS. Only one thing is business. Okay.
All right, Di, did you have anything to add?
Oh, I was just checking on the calendar versus business days for the TRS so I could finish writing this long-winded response.
Okay.
I'm trying to draft our response. Sorry about that.
Are you multitasking?
I'm trying. So.
All right. All right, well, while you're doing that, let's do another poll. So this one's about prior written notice for exiting. Is this true or false? The parent may waive the 10-day prior written notice for exiting. True or false? All right, so false is winning so far with about half of the votes in.
Yes, 58%, 59%, 60%, 61%. We're going up. And if you can't participate via the poll, just type in your answer.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. So we had 19% that said true and 81% that said false. And the answer is false. So good job with that. For anyone that responded true, maybe you might have missed it in one of the previous slides. Let's go back to that one. Okay, so when we talk about exiting, this is the situation where there's no option to waive the 10-day prior written notice. So if you look at the forms, you won't see that little box down at the bottom, which gives the option to waive prior written notice. Okay, so what happens if the child is transferred to another county? So this is discussed in paragraph P, section 4. In this situation, the Early Intervention Service Coordinator will provide an electronic or paper copy of the child's early intervention record to the new county within 10 calendar days from the date of record request from the new county. So we're back to calendar days. And information kept in the statewide data system shall be updated by the current Early Intervention Service Coordinator before transfer of the child's records. Then the receiving Early Intervention Service Coordinator shall, within 45 calendar days of the transfer, ensure completion of a review of existing eligibility and assessment information, updated assessments as necessary, and a review of the IFSP. Okay, so I think we have some time to answer some more questions. Di, were there some that you wanted to address today?
Well, I'm going through them. So
Okay.
there, yeah, let's see. Trying to verify. There's still a lot of questions around the case note and the verification. So we will address those in FAQs. I've been trying to address them, but they're kind of, each one has a little different caveat to it. So we are also working on developing or revising our verification checklist. How many of you, maybe that, Lori, if you could take us to that, to our website.
Okay.
For those verification tools.
Yes.
This actually might be helpful.
Okay. So in this case, you're going to go to this red tab, Data and Monitoring. And then I believe it's under Monitoring. And then you'll see it's about the third one down, Verification Compliance Checklist.
And we'll be updating this. So this is the 45-day verification. If you could scroll down to TRS.
There you go.
So you'll see that when the state requests, so if your county is up for TRS verification, then this checklist tells you exactly what they're looking at and all the components that have to be on the case note or contained in the case note in order to pass verification. So please use this. We will be updating this to reflect new rules, but this is the existing rules. So you will see the IFSP date, signatures and acknowledgments, what needs to be required, the parent signature and date, the service coordinator signature and date, the interventionist signature and date. Then for the new service, what has to be on the IFSP, but then look at the service start date, verification document, it's a service provider note. And then when you look at the requirement, it says the specific activity, the start date on or after the date of the IFSP within 30 days, the provider's name and discipline, and the provider's licensure. So can you scroll down? Is there any more?
I think there is.
Information was provided to or the intervention occurred with the family. An outcome was clearly addressed and the signature. So please use this tool to help you with making sure that when records are requested or verification is requested related to TRS, you know exactly what you have to submit. And I don't think there'll be many changes to this. We will still require the actual case note. And we have documented what is required and the source and the verification document for all three compliance indicators.
All right, so Di, we did have a couple questions about why we are providing a 10-day notice for exit.
So why are we providing a 10-day notice for exit? Because it's part of the family's procedural safeguards.
All right. And did you see Melissa's question about preschools that are offering services right away? She says sometimes districts surprise us and offer preschool services the next day prior to the third birthday, and the option to not allow families to waive the 10-day prior written notice would prevent the child from starting preschool.
Okay, I'll have to look at that one.
Okay.
Surprise. This option does not allow parents to waive their 10 days. So Melissa, it would be very helpful if you could send us an example of that situation. Then we can take a look at that. Okay. Looks like a repeat of the slide about if you cannot reach the family.
Okay. Okay. So when the parent cannot be reached, the EISC is going to use Form EI-10 to provide prior written notice that the child will be exited if the parent doesn't contact the EISC within 10 calendar days from the date of that notice.
Okay. Where is this document located on the website? I think, Margaret, did we show, is the verification tool, is that what you're referring to? What is TRS, Carol? That is timely receipt of services. And again, that means the very first time a family received their early intervention service. So service was on the grid, parent consented to implement the IFSP, and this is the very first time that, let's say, speech therapy is provided to the family.
Which must occur within 30 calendar
days. Yeah, I think Lori's right. So some confusion. So again, they're local processes. So your local agency may require procedures or activities to ensure timely receipt of services on all families. And then there's the verification process. So for counties who we request verification, so the state's requesting verification on timely receipt of services, then we require the case note and the information that we just showed you on the verification checklist. Is there a list of acronyms? There used to be way back
Yeah,
when. I don't know if we have one.
we'd have
Uh,
to look for it. I know we did a presentation a couple years ago for, I think, Franklin County about EI terminology and acronyms. So we'll look for that, Bethany. Making myself a note.
and there's some questions about crosswalks, and are we going to develop crosswalks? I know we did a crosswalk for the credentialing rule because there was a lot of changes. To be honest, this rule, like the timely receipt of services, the prior written notices, those are not changes. So we're not planning to develop crosswalks related to those. So Esther has the question about the rule states that EI service providers must provide the early intervention records within 10 business days. Does that mean when service coordinators request case notes to verify timely receipt of services, they must be provided within 10 business days? That is correct, Esther. So if I'm the service coordinator and I'm requesting timely receipt of services for special instruction, then you have 10 business days from that request to get it to me.
And Kimberly had a question about the prior written notice. Does the 10-day notice apply for children turning 3? So I'm going to go back to the slide about that.
I believe the prior written notice is not required for those.
That is correct.
Sure.
So there are just those two situations where prior written notice would not be required. And yes, reaching 3 years of age is one of them.
So that will take care of those questions related to the child turning 3. Do you need to provide prior written notice? So 5123-1002 P1 states that prior written notice is not required if the child is deceased or reaches age 3. So that took care of a couple of questions here. So again, prior written notice isn't required if a child is reached 3 years of age. Oh, Shannon has a list that they have created in Franklin County about, I'm assuming, crosswalks, and she's willing to share it with us. Please do.
Excellent.
And we can post this. We'll look at it and post it on our website. Nicole, hopefully we clarified that. So the two situations where prior written notice is not required related to exiting is when the child is deceased or reached age 3. So yes, so any service, any of the 17 EI services. So the question is, I mentioned special instruction, but would this also include a case note from like the speech therapist, occupational therapist, PT? Yes, so any provider on the IFSP providing early intervention services, this is applicable to all providers. Okay, I think I've gone down the list. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for those questions. If we did miss any or had some that we mentioned, we're going to get back to you. Those will all be included in the FAQ document that will be on the website. So if your question for some reason did not get answered today, please know that we will be addressing those in the near future and posting those to the website. All right, Di, do you have anything to add before we kind of wrap up?
No, I'm just trying to go through, what happens is when we put in a question and then I answer and there's other questions and it scrolls down real quickly. So I'm just trying to go up there to make sure that I didn't miss anything. So I'm going to put something in there, either FAQ or some statement that'll flag it for us that this is a question we didn't answer today. So we don't miss any questions. Of course, just to remind you that, definitely use the resources that we have provided for you to prepare for implementing the new rules on July 1st, but also reach out to your program consultants and for any additional questions that you have. So that resource is also available to you.